If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's begin the story. I never thought I'd still be delivering pizzas at 36. When I first took the job at Pizza Hut in my early 20s, it was supposed to be a temporary gig, a way to pay rent while I figured out what to do with my life. Back then, I told myself I'd quit within a year. Two at most, but 1 month bled into the next, 1 year into another. And here I am, still wearing the same red polo and black visor, still stuffing napkins into the side pockets of my car door, still following the red line on a GPS to someone's front porch. Not that I really complain. The money's not great, but the job's easy enough. My manager Carlos doesn't hover. I know every back street in Cedar Falls, Wisconsin, like the creases in my own hand. And most nights the roads are quiet, just me, the hum of the engine, and the smell of whatever's in the warmer bag riding shotgun. I live alone in a cramped one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. My only roommate is Lucky, a 12-year-old mutt with cloudy eyes and a habit of snoring louder than I do. My social life is basically my Thursday night Xbox group. Guys I've never met in person, but I've stormed 100 virtual battlefields with. As far as I'm concerned, that's enough dating, marriage, kids. No thanks. I've seen too many friends get ground down by that treadmill. My life is simple, predictable, safe. At least that's what I thought. It was a Friday in late November, the air sharp with the kind of cold that slips through your jacket no matter how thick it is. The smell inside the store was the same as always: baked dough, tomato sauce, a hint of oregano. We had the usual rush from about 6 to 9, phones ringing off the hook ovens running nonstop, Carlos shouting to keep things moving. By 10:30 p.m., the rush was dying. I was leaning on the counter by the soda cooler, sipping a bottle of Mountain Dew and scrolling through my phone. When the new ticket printed, Carlos glanced at it and smirked. "Ethan," he called, holding the slip up. "This one's yours, 1129, Ridgewood Lane, paid online. 1 large meat lovers, 1 breadsticks, 2 liter of Pepsi." "All right," I said, taking the receipt. As I stuffed the pizza bag and soda into my carrier, Carlos added, "Careful up there. Ridgewood's been weird lately." I looked at him. "Weird how?" He shrugged. "Couple break-ins. Some guy claiming people are snooping around his yard at night. Just stay alert." I'd been to Ridgewood before. It was one of those older neighborhoods north of town, a mix of nice houses and a few that looked like they were one mortgage payment away from foreclosure. The streets were narrow, the streetlights patchy. Still, it was just another delivery, or so I thought. The roads out toward Ridgewood were nearly empty. The city always felt different at night. The daytime noise replaced by long, quiet stretches where the only sound was my tires on the asphalt. Frost clung to the edges of lawns, glittering in the occasional porch light. When I turned onto Ridgewood Lane, the darkness deepened. Out of the 8 street lamps, only 3 were working. The rest stood like dead sentinels. My headlights swept across houses with peeling paint, sagging porches, chain-link fences. 1129 was 3/4 down the block. A 2-story place with faded green siding and a garage that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. An old Ford pickup sat in the driveway. Leaning against the truck was a man in a dark hoodie. Head tilted down, hands in his pockets. I parked at the curb, killed the engine, and grabbed the insulated bag with the pizza in one hand, the Pepsi in the other. "Evening," I called as I walked up the driveway. "Order for Ben?" The man didn't answer right away. When he looked up, the hood still shadowed most of his face. "Yeah," he said slowly. "That's me." He stepped closer, and the smell of cigarette smoke mixed with something metallic. Not blood, not yet, but something close like rust. "What's on it?" he asked. I blinked. Meat lovers and breadsticks." He gave a small nod. "Breadsticks are fine." "Fine?" I thought. That's an odd thing to say about breadsticks. "All right," I said, holding the bag out. "Here you go." That's when I saw it. The quick flick of his wrist, the snap of metal. A switchblade. "Put it down," he said flatly. My grip tightened on the bag. "Look, man, you already." A van door slid open behind me. The sound hit me like a punch. I turned my head just enough to see 3 figures climbing out. All in dark hoodies. 2 had knives. The third had something longer. A crowbar, they moved quick, fanning out to block me from the street. The man with the crowbar tapped it against his palm. Eyes locked on mine. The first guy, the one by the truck, stepped in close enough that I could see the frayed edge of his hoodie's drawstring. Wallet, phone keys, I swallowed hard. All right. Just don't. The crowbar swung low, catching me in the ribs. I gasped, almost dropping the pizza. My phone clattered to the driveway. One of them scooped it up. I've always thought of myself as someone who'd fight back if pushed. But in that moment, facing four men in the dark with weapons, my body betrayed me. My hands shook as I pulled my wallet from my back pocket and tossed it over. The tall one rifled through it. $20? You're kidding. That's all I have. I said, voice trembling. Check his pockets, the crowbar guy said. Hands patted me down roughly. When they found nothing else, there was a pause. Then the first guy muttered, he's lying. The first stab came so fast I didn't even process it, just a white-hot punch under my ribs. Then another in my side. My legs buckled. I tried to back away, but the crowbar caught my shoulder, sending pain shooting down my arm. They didn't stop. The knives flashed again and again, chest, stomach, back. Warmth spread under my shirt. My breath came in shallow gasps, and then as suddenly as it began, they stepped back. Waste of time, one muttered. They piled into the van, doors slamming, engine roaring. In seconds, the taillights vanished into the dark. I was left kneeling on the cracked driveway, my hands pressed to my side, blood seeping through my fingers. The cold air burned my lungs. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Somehow, I staggered to my car. Every step felt like wading through waist-deep water. My vision narrowed to a tunnel. I don't remember much of the drive to the hospital, just ignoring red lights, a horn blaring when I swerved, the taste of copper in my mouth. When I pulled into the ER lot, I barely got it in park before falling out of the seat. I woke under harsh white lights, machines beeping steadily. My chest ached with every breath. A nurse told me I had multiple stab wounds, 2 cracked ribs, and a partially collapsed lung. If any of them had been an inch deeper, the doctor said you wouldn't be here. It's been 11 days since I got out. Lucky hasn't left my side. My car still has dried blood in the seat, a reminder I can't quite bring myself to clean yet. The cops took my statement, but I know how this will go. No plates, no clear faces, no cameras on Ridgewood. Carlos told me to take as much time off as I need. He even hinted I should think about quitting, but I'm not sure I can. The quiet streets, the hum of the engine, the little moments between houses, it's what I know. It's who I am. I just hope the next address I knock on isn't another trap. Because I have a feeling they're not done. Story 2, I never thought I'd end up back in fast food. After high school, I told myself I was done with grease traps, fryer burns, and customers who thought extra sauce meant a personal favor. I worked at a Burger King when I was 17, and by the time I quit, my uniform smelled like onions, even after 3 washes. I swore I'd move on to something, anything better. But life's funny like that. It keeps handing you the same deck until you learn the trick you're supposed to play. By 28, I'd worked more jobs than I could remember. Warehouse picker, janitor, delivery driver, security guard for a strip mall in Ohio. None of them lasted. I either got laid off or I walked. I was in debt, behind on rent, and back sleeping in my little sister's apartment in Springfield, Missouri, on a futon that sagged in the middle. She never complained out loud, but I knew I was wearing out my welcome. You need steady work, Alex, she told me one night while we ate microwave mac and cheese. Something that'll keep you here for more than 3 months. The next morning, I was walking past a strip of chain restaurants when I saw it. A laminated sign taped to the glass door of a Pizza Hut. I stood there for a minute, staring at it like it might change into something else. I hadn't worked in food service in over a decade, but the idea of free meals and a paycheck by Friday was enough to get me through that door. Inside, the smell hit me. Warm dough, garlic butter, pepperoni. It was almost comforting. The dining room had that familiar red vinyl booth seating, sticky salt shakers, and a half-broken soda machine humming in the corner. A tall, barrel-chested man in his 50s walked over. Bald on top, clean-shaven, wearing a black Pizza Hut polo that looked like it had seen 100 wash cycles. "You here for the job?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I saw the sign." Name's Dennis. I'm the manager. You got any kitchen experience? A little, I lied. Used to work at a cafe. Dennis gave me a long look, like he knew I was stretching the truth, but then shrugged. We're short-staffed. Can you start tomorrow at 4? Just like that, I was in. The first shift was rough but manageable. The kitchen was a cramped L shape, ovens along one wall, prep tables down the middle, walk-in cooler in the back. My job was to handle dough prep, sauce ladling, and the occasional dine-in table when things got busy. That's when I met him. "Mornin'," came a voice from behind the dough table. I turned to see a man in his late 40s, broad shoulders, thick dark beard streaked with gray. His name tag read Roy. "You must be the new guy," he said, offering a flour-dusted hand. His grip was firm, but not in that fake tough guy way. "Don't let Dennis scare you. He barks, but he don't bite." Roy had been there 12 years, knew every shortcut in the book. He showed me how to eyeball sauce so the pies baked evenly, how to rotate pans so the crust didn't burn, how to keep the dough from blowing out overnight. He cracked jokes between orders, made customers laugh when they complained. "Rule number 1, he told me one night, sliding a pan into the oven. You never let them see you sweat. If you look calm, they stay calm, even when they're crazy." It was 2 weeks in when the first weird thing happened. It was a Tuesday, dead slow. I was wiping down the counter when a man walked in, tall, pale, wearing a faded blue windbreaker. His hair was greasy, eyes darting around like he was checking for exits. "Welcome to Pizza Hut," I said. "Dine in or carry out?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze fixed on the kitchen door, then on Roy, who was shaping dough. Finally, he spoke in this low, urgent voice. "Is it safe to eat here?" I blinked. Yeah, totally safe." He stared at me a beat longer, then ordered a medium cheese pizza. "No toppings," he said, like it mattered. When I told Roy about it, he just shrugged. "Probably some nut. We get 'em." But when I brought the pizza to the guy's table, he didn't touch it. He just leaned forward and whispered, "It's not safe. You need to get out before you can't." I laughed nervously. "Okay. Have a nice night." He didn't smile. He just stood, walked out into the cold, and didn't look back. The next night, Dennis was in the office doing inventory when 2 cops came in. They wanted to talk to Roy. Something about a disturbance the night before. I figured it was nothing, until one of the officers pulled me aside later and said, "If you see that man in the blue jacket again, call us." I asked why. The cop hesitated, then said, "He's got footage of this place, stuff you wouldn't want on the internet." That stuck with me. 2 days later, I found out what stuff meant. The officer came back carrying a phone and an evidence bag. He asked if I recognized the kitchen in the video. I did. It was ours. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed Roy at the prep table with another man I didn't know. On the cutting board was something pale. Flesh. A hand. Roy was grinning, holding a cleaver in one hand, the severed wrist in the other. The younger man fed strips of meat into the grinder. Roy looked at the camera and said, "Guess this one's going in the stuffed crust." My stomach lurched. They arrested Roy that afternoon. The cops dug through the walk-in freezer and found plastic-wrapped parcels that weren't pork, beef, or chicken. They found bones buried in the dirt patch behind the dumpster. Dennis swore he had no idea. Maybe he didn't. I quit on the spot. Now, even months later, I can't eat pizza without my hands shaking. Every time I smell baking dough, I see Roy's grin in my head. And I think about that man in the blue jacket, the one who tried to warn me. I should have listened. Story 3, I never planned on staying at Pizza Hut for more than a couple of months. Back then, it was just a temporary fix. Something to cover my rent while I figured out what to do next after dropping out of community college in Dayton, Ohio. I had been taking classes in criminal justice, thinking I'd maybe become a probation officer one day, but reality hit hard. Student debt, car trouble, and the sinking realization that I wasn't as passionate about it as I'd told myself. The summer after I left school, I told myself I'd work here until Christmas. 6 months, tops. Then I'd find something better. But 6 months turned into a year, and a year turned into almost 2. It wasn't bad most of the time. The tips could be decent if you knew the regulars. The hours were flexible, and there was a kind of autopilot rhythm to the work. Prep, clean, deliver, repeat. I liked the night shifts the most. On slow nights, it would just be me, one other driver, and whoever was managing. We'd listen to the radio in the back, trade dumb stories, and keep each other awake until closing. Pizza Hut in Maplewood isn't glamorous. Hell, the roof leaks when it rains hard. But it had become familiar, comfortable, or at least it used to be. The first time I met Carl, it was a Wednesday in late March. Our manager, Diane, brought him in to cover the dinner rush. He was in his late 50s, tall but lean, with a face that looked worn down by years of chain smoking. His hair was a steel gray fringe clinging to the sides of his head, and his mustache was the kind you'd see in old DMV photos. When Diane introduced us, he gave a curt nod and said, "Carl." His voice was raspy, like he'd been chewing gravel. I figured he was just the quiet type. But over the next couple weeks, I noticed he spent a lot of time in the back near the lockers in the break room, more than most drivers. We had a 4-camera security setup in the store, one at the front counter, one pointing at the door, one above the kitchen prep area, and one in the narrow hallway leading to the bathrooms and the employee lockers. Carl seemed interested in them. He'd stand in front of the monitor longer than anyone else, leaning in close, tilting his head like he was memorizing the footage. At first I brushed it off. Maybe he was just bored. One Friday night, we had a slow stretch. Just me, Diane, and Carl. Around 9:30, a family came in. A mom, dad, and their daughter, maybe 7 years old. The little girl ran straight to the window booth while her parents ordered. I glanced over at Carl, who was stacking boxes at the prep table. Only, he wasn't stacking anymore. He was standing still, watching the girl, not glancing, watching. His eyes didn't blink, his mouth slightly open. "Hey, Carl," I said, trying to keep it casual. "We're out of medium boxes. Can you grab some from the back?" He didn't react. I said his name again, louder this time. He jerked slightly like I'd woken him from a dream, then shuffled to the storage room without a word. That image stuck in my head for days. A week later, I was working with Melissa, one of our assistant managers. She was on break in the back scrolling her phone while I handled the counter. Around 10:15, I heard the bathroom door creak open, followed by quick, light footsteps. I turned just in time to see Carl slip from the employee bathroom into the break room. Something about the way he moved low fast like he didn't want to be noticed made my skin crawl. I walked back there quietly. The break room small, one table, a mini fridge, and 6 lockers against the wall. Melissa's purse was sitting on the table. Carl was next to it, his hands hovering above the opening like he'd just pulled them back. "What are you doing?" I asked. He froze. Didn't turn. Didn't speak. I said, "What are you doing?" Slowly, he turned his head toward me. His eyes were empty. Flat looking for my phone, he rasped. His phone was clipped to his belt. I stared at it, then at him. He shuffled past me without another word. When Melissa came back, I told her what I'd seen. She checked her purse. Nothing missing, but her wallet was unzipped. We told Diane the next day. Diane just sighed. "Yeah, Carl's a little strange, but he's harmless." I wanted to believe that. 2 nights later, I decided to test something. When Carl left on a delivery, I went to the computer that stores our security footage. The feed isn't great, grainy, choppy, but clear enough to see what's happening. I pulled up the hallway camera from the night Melissa was on break, and there it was. Carl standing just outside the bathroom door, which was slightly open. Inside, Melissa was fixing her hair in the mirror, completely unaware. He stood there for nearly 2 minutes without moving. My hands felt cold on the keyboard. 2 nights later, it was slow again. I stepped outside to take a call around 10:05. When I came back in, Carl wasn't at the counter. I heard something from the back. I pushed the break room door open. Carl was standing at Melissa's locker, the door slightly open, his hands inside. "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped. He jumped, eyes wide. Nothing. Just get out." For the first time, I saw something like fear in his face. He muttered something I couldn't catch, grabbed his jacket, and left. I locked the door behind him. The next day, I showed Diane the footage, him at Melissa's locker, and the hallway clip from before. This time, she didn't brush it off. Carl was fired on the spot. She even called the police, but they said there wasn't enough for charges. That night, I couldn't shake the bad feeling. I went through older security footage. 2 weeks earlier, at 2:47 a.m., long after closing, Carl came back. He had a key. He unlocked the back door, walked straight to the break room, opened Melissa's locker, pulled out her red Pizza Hut work shirt, and held it to his face for nearly a minute. Then he folded it neatly, put it back, and left. I never saw Carl again. But for weeks after every time the front door chimed, I'd glance up expecting him to be there. Some nights when the store was quiet and I saw movement in the grainy corner of the security feed, my chest would tighten, and I'd wonder if Carl had found another way inside. Story 4. I never thought my life would get this small. That's the thing nobody tells you about getting older. How quickly your world can shrink down to work, bills, and a couple of places you go on autopilot. I'm 34, a single mom, and I work the night shift as a patient care tech at Clearwater Falls Regional Hospital. It's not glamorous. 12 hours a night of checking vitals, emptying bedpans, lifting people twice my size. It's honest work, but it wears on you. By the time I clock out at 7 a.m., I'm a zombie. My back aches, my hands smell faintly of disinfectant, no matter how hard I scrub, and all I want is to collapse for a few hours before my son wakes up for school. Micah's 10. Bright kid, goofy, with a stubborn streak he definitely got from me. His favorite food? Pepperoni pizza. Always has been. He'd eat it for breakfast if I let him. And on nights I was too drained to cook, pizza was our shortcut. Clearwater Falls isn't a big town. The Pizza Hut on Westlake Avenue is 5 minutes from our apartment, right next to a boarded-up video rental place and a laundromat with flickering neon. The first time I went in, it looked like any other Pizza Hut. Red roof, faint smell of grease and oregano, big laminated menu boards above the counter. But after a few visits, I noticed something. It was never busy, not slow night empty, always empty. No other customers, no delivery guys hustling in and out. Just the same 2 employees every single time. The manager, I guessed, was a tall, heavy-set guy named Ron. Mid-40s, shaved head, deep voice, and this way of speaking that made everything sound like an instruction, even "have a good night." The other was a skinny young man named Derek, maybe mid-20s, pale skin, limp brown hair, darting eyes that never seemed to settle. At first, Derek was just awkward. Too many questions, too eager to fill silences. "You work around here? What building do you live in? What's your boy's name?" The kind of stuff that makes you want to give half answers. One night in January, after a double shift, I stopped in to grab a large pepperoni. I was bone-tired, still in my scrubs, and just wanted to be in bed. Derek leaned on the counter, grinning like we were old friends. "Long night?" he asked. "Something like that." I slid my card across the counter. "You're here a lot. I could set up a standing order for you." "That's okay," I said, forcing a smile. His grin widened. "I'm just saying, I know when you come in." The way he said it stuck with me all the way home. Over the next few weeks, I started dreading going inside. But convenience is a hell of a drug, especially when you're exhausted. Micah never complained, and it was cheap. Then Valentine's week rolled around. I'd just come off a brutal stretch of 3 back-to-back doubles. My feet were numb, my head pounded, and I couldn't imagine standing over a stove. It had snowed all day, that heavy, wet kind that swallows sound. When I walked into Pizza Hut, Derek was alone at the counter. No Ron. He glanced up from his phone, his eyes lighting up. "Well, look who's my Valentine," he said. I didn't even bother faking a laugh. "Just here for a pickup, Derek." You ever think about how lonely it is, eating pizza alone? I could keep you company. "Not interested." His expression flattened, but the smile stayed plastered on. "You think you're too good for me, don't you?" I opened my mouth, but the phone behind the counter rang. He turned away to answer, voice suddenly sweet, almost sing-song. When I got home, I set the box on the table. The smell hit me immediately. sour, almost rotten. I lifted a slice. The bottom was black and fuzzy. Micah wrinkled his nose. Mom, this is gross. I grabbed my phone and called the store. Derek picked up. Oh man, wow, that's not okay, he said, almost laughing. Tell you what, I'll bring you a fresh one myself. No charge. I should have said no. I should have hung up. But I was angry and tired, and I just wanted dinner solved. 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Not the doorbell. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. When I opened it, Derek was standing there. No uniform, just a dark hoodie and jeans, the pizza box in his hands. Here you go, he said, leaning forward. Mind if I come in? It's freezing out here. No. I took the box, moving to close the door. His foot slid into the gap. You shouldn't talk to me like that. Something in his voice made my skin crawl. I shoved hard, the door slamming on his shoe. He yelped, stumbled back, and I locked it immediately. For the next 2 minutes, he pounded on the door, shouting, "Ungrateful bitch, you'll regret this." Then silence. When I finally opened the box, the second pizza was moldy too. I called corporate. Nothing happened. I went to the police. They said unless he came inside or hurt me, there was no crime. For weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, I took the trash out around midnight. Across the street, under the broken streetlight, a figure stood perfectly still. I couldn't see his face, but I knew who it was, and I knew he wasn't done. Story 5. I never used to mind closing shifts. Some people dread them. The aching legs, the greasy smell that clings to your hair, the quiet that creeps in after midnight. But for me, nights at Pizza Hut on Brookline Avenue had a rhythm I liked. You could hear yourself think after the dinner rush. The ovens hummed like a space heater in winter. The clock ticked slower. And for a little while, I could pretend the rest of the world wasn't rushing past me. I'd been at this location for just under 9 months. Before that, a patchwork of short-lived jobs, stocking paper towels at Target, mopping floors in a 24-hour gym, folding clothes in a thrift store, until the owner's nephew decided he should take over my hours. None of it stuck. None of it felt like I belonged anywhere. Pizza Hut wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Steady mattered. Plus, the manager, Randy Lyle, wasn't the hovering, clipboard-tapping type. He'd been in the business 20 years, could toss dough one-handed while giving you life advice you didn't ask for, and if you showed up on time and didn't burn the breadsticks, he mostly left you alone. The Brookline Avenue shop sat in Everford, Illinois, a not-quite-small town that never decided if it wanted to be suburban or rural. By day, you'd see the usual mix of grocery shoppers, kids on bikes, UPS trucks rumbling past. By night, though, the strip got a little weirder. Half the lights in the parking lot were burnt out. The gas station across the street closed at 10, leaving its pumps glowing in a weird, lonely way. And there was always the hum of the highway, just a few streets over, like an endless mechanical lullaby. That night, a Thursday in late February, started like any other. Cold, damp air clung to the sidewalks. My breath came out in little ghosts when I walked from my car to the store. Inside, it was me, Derek, a lanky, sarcastic delivery driver who loved to play TikTok videos too loud on his phone, and Melanie, our newest cashier, still fumbling with the register keys. Randy had left around 9 after the dinner rush thinned, leaving me as acting shift lead, which mostly meant making sure nobody forgot to lock the back door. By 10:45, the orders slowed to a trickle. Derek was leaning on the counter scrolling through his phone. Melanie was restocking napkins, and I was loading clean pans onto the rack. At 11:02, the front door chimed. A man walked in. I noticed 2 things immediately. He was dry, even though it had been drizzling for hours. He didn't come up to the counter. He was maybe mid-30s, tall but slouched, with stringy brown hair brushing his jaw. His jeans were faded to a pale blue, his hoodie a washed-out black, with the sleeves pulled over his hands. He stopped just inside the doorway, and his eyes found me right away. Not Derek, not Melanie. Me. Hey there, Melanie said, voice bright in that nervous cashier way. He didn't respond, just looked. I busied myself with the pan rack, pretending not to notice. Sometimes people spaced out, sometimes they recognized you from somewhere. But the seconds stretched. I glanced up again, still staring, not blinking enough. Posture all wrong, not aggressive, not timid, just there. Derek finally looked up. "You ordering something, man?" he asked. The stranger tilted his head, like Derek's voice came from underwater. Then, slow as stretching gum, he smiled. It wasn't the "I just remembered a joke" kind of smile. It was thin, deliberate, and it didn't reach his eyes. "You think my van'll fit in that space outside?" he asked. His voice was quiet, almost too quiet for the room. "What kind of van?" Derek asked, skeptical. "A big one," the man said, still smiling, still looking at me. I felt my stomach knot. "I think you can tell if it fits," I said, trying to keep my tone flat. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he turned, slow as before, and stepped back out into the drizzle. The door chimed behind him. Derek muttered something about freaks and went back to his phone. I walked to the front window. Under a flickering parking lot light, about half a block down, sat a white panel van. Not clean white, dirty white. Paint peeling along the doors, dents in the side, rear windows blacked out with something I couldn't quite make out. He climbed in, but didn't move. No headlights, no ignition. The rain made everything blur, but I could still feel him there. The night dragged. By 11:50, Derek had taken his last delivery and decided to call it quits early. Claimed his girlfriend was mad about something again. Melanie left 5 minutes later, waving from the door. That left me, the ovens, and the steady hum of the cooler fans. Through the front window, the van still sat. I told myself maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe his van broke down. But my gut kept whispering, no, he's waiting for you. At 12:58, I locked the doors, flipped the sign to closed, and started mopping. By 1:17, everything was wiped, stacked, and shut down. I stepped out the side door into the cold. My car was only 20 feet away, parked near the dumpster. That's when I saw it. The van's rear door was open, just a few inches, enough for someone to slip out. A cold ripple crawled up my spine. I gripped my keys tighter and quickened my pace. That's when I heard it. "Hey!" I turned. He was standing by the van now, hoodie sleeves still over his hands. "Watch my van for me?" he asked. Before I could answer, shapes moved in the shadows along the brick wall. 4 figures, all hooded, faces hidden. They started walking toward me, slow, purposeful, spreading just enough to block my way to the street. My heart slammed in my chest. They were between me and any open space. My only shot was my car. I broke into a half run. My keys slipped from my hand, hitting the pavement with a metallic crack. Footsteps behind me quickened. I snatched the keys, shoved them into the lock, and yanked the door open. Just as I slammed it shut, a hand slapped the glass. The van man stayed back, watching. They surrounded the car. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the key again, but I jammed it into the ignition and twisted. The engine roared. They didn't move. I threw it into reverse, tires screeching on wet pavement. They stepped back at the last second, faces still hidden. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I drove aimlessly for 20 minutes before heading home, taking back roads, doubling back twice. I parked 3 blocks away from my apartment, slept with the lights on, never called the cops. What would I say? That a stranger wanted me to watch his van and I felt weird about it? But every time I see a white van now, my chest tightens. And if you ever hear someone ask you to watch their van in a half-empty parking lot after midnight, don't answer. Don't look back. Just get in your car and go. Story 6. I wasn't planning on going out that night. If I'm being honest, the thought of leaving the house after the week I just had made my skin crawl. But sometimes, family time is the only thing keeping you upright, even when you feel like collapsing. Mark and I had been married for 11 years, and in that time we learned how to survive on scraps of togetherness. He was a union welder for a construction company out of Milwaukee, which meant his schedule was brutal. 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. Home late, asleep early, up before sunrise. I wasn't exactly coasting either. My days started at 6 a.m., getting our 8-year-old daughter Sophie ready for school, then heading to my morning shift as a receptionist at a pediatric clinic. Afternoons were spent stocking shelves and breaking down boxes at a local hardware store for 4 hours. By the time I got home, I was running on caffeine fumes and stubbornness. Still, Friday nights were ours. No matter how many bills sat in a neat little stack on the kitchen counter. No matter how tired we always made room for one simple tradition: dinner out with Sophie. Sometimes it was a cheap diner, sometimes burgers, sometimes Chinese takeout. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. That week, Sophie had decided early. Pizza Hut, she'd announced on Tuesday night, swinging her legs under the kitchen table. You sure? Didn't we just have pizza last week? I asked. This is different, she said, grinning. They have those new cheesy bites crusts. You can pull them off like little breadsticks. Mark had laughed. Kids got her priorities straight. So when Friday rolled around, I didn't question it. I figured we'd eat, maybe swing by the Red Box on Main Street for a movie, then call it a night. 9:54 p.m. It was later than usual. Mark's shift had run long, and Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch waiting for him. When she woke up, hair sticking up on one side, she still wanted pizza. We drove out to the Pizza Hut on the edge of town, not the nice one in the shopping center, but the standalone building on the corner of Ashland and Quarry. It sat between a darkened car wash and a used tire shop, the red neon sign humming faintly above the entrance. The parking lot was nearly empty except for a beat-up green pickup near the dumpster. Inside, it was warm and smelled of garlic and baked dough. A guy with a scruffy beard stood at the register, punching something into the screen. In the far corner, an older man in an apron was sliding a pan pizza into the oven. And by the soda machine, leaning on the counter with her phone, was a girl, maybe 19 or 20. She had long brown hair pulled into a loose braid, the red Pizza Hut polo hanging a little big on her frame. Sophie noticed her instantly. She wasn't shy, but she had that flicker of curiosity in her eyes that only comes when a kid spots someone they think is cool. Mark leaned close. I think she's got herself a role model. I nudged him with my elbow. Behave. We stepped up to the counter. One large cheesy bites crust, extra cheese, Sophie said, chin tilted up like she was placing an important order. The bearded cashier smiled faintly and rang it up. 15 minutes. We took a booth near the window. Outside, the street lamps cast yellow pools onto the cracked asphalt. Inside, it was quiet except for the hiss from the ovens and the soft clatter of dishes from the back. I noticed the cashier glance more than once toward the short hallway leading to the bathrooms. The girl by the soda fountain didn't move from her spot, thumbs tapping at her phone. The pizza came out steaming. Mark started pulling the cheesy bites apart while Sophie poured herself a soda. She'd just taken a sip when she set the cup down and said, I need to go to the bathroom. I'll come with you, I said automatically. She shook her head. I can go by myself. You sure? Yeah, it's right there. It wasn't like her to refuse company, but I didn't want to embarrass her, so I let her go. The hallway was short, just 2 doors, men and women. I watched her walk down and disappear inside. 5 minutes passed, then 7. By the time it hit 10, I felt a prickle of unease at the base of my neck. Mark, she's been gone a while. He pushed his chair back immediately. I'll check. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hallway. Then I heard them coming back. Fast, heavy. When he emerged, he was carrying Sophie in his arms. Her head rested limply against his chest, eyes half open but unfocused. Her skin looked pale, almost gray under the fluorescent lights. What happened? My voice cracked. I found her on the floor. We're going, now. We bolted, the pizza left untouched on the table. The drive to St. Anne's Hospital was a blur of red lights and white knuckles. Sophie didn't speak, didn't cry, just stared blankly at the dashboard. At the ER, they ran every test. Blood work, vitals, a CT scan. No drugs, no head injury. Slightly elevated temperature. Blood pressure higher than normal. The doctor's tone was calm, but his eyes kept flicking to the monitor. Likely a fainting episode, he said. Keep her hydrated, monitor her tonight. Follow up with your pediatrician. We brought her home after midnight. I made her sleep between us. 2:46 a.m. Sophie sat up screaming. Not the kind of scream you let out after a bad dream. This was raw, panicked, primal. Her hands clawed at my shirt like she was drowning. "It's okay, baby, you're safe," I whispered, rocking her. But it wasn't okay. The next night, 2:46 a.m., it happened again, and the next, and the next. Within a week, she'd stopped talking, stopped laughing, refused to walk down the hallway alone, refused to use the bathroom without one of us waiting outside. When I gently asked her about that night at Pizza Hut, she'd shake her head, eyes filling with tears. One evening, desperate to get her to open up, I said, "Remember that girl by the soda machine? The one you were watching?" Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide. "He's going to hurt her," Sophie whispered. I froze. "Who?" Her voice cracked. "The man in the bathroom." Mark and I locked eyes. My stomach felt like ice water. "What man?" I asked. She started to cry, shaking her head. "He's not a man." Then, barely audible, "Don't let him find me." That night, after she finally fell asleep, I drove back to Pizza Hut. The parking lot was nearly empty. Inside, a young guy was stacking chairs onto tables. "Was there a girl working here last Friday?" I asked. He paused, nodded slowly. "Amber. Is she here tonight?" His expression shifted. "Number she passed away. That same night." I just stared. "What?" "She went to the bathroom before close, didn't come back. We found her on the floor. Paramedics said heart attack. She was 19. He hesitated. "But she was healthy." When I got home, Sophie was asleep. On the floor beside her bed was her sketch pad. On the open page was a crude drawing, a tall, shadowy shape with curling horns. Beneath it, in shaky letters, it whispered to me in the bathroom. And I knew without a shred of doubt that whatever had been in that Pizza Hut bathroom with my daughter wasn't finished. Story 7. I used to think pizza was the one thing in life that never lied to me. It didn't judge. It didn't argue. It didn't walk out the door one night and never come back. Growing up, it was the one constant in a house where everything else kept falling apart. Friday nights in middle school, my mom would bring home a large pepperoni lovers from Pizza Hut, drop it on the coffee table, and we'd watch whatever VHS she rented from the gas station. When my parents' fights got bad, pizza was dinner because it was cheap, fast, and didn't require anyone to talk. In college, it was my study partner, greasy boxes stacked in the corner of my dorm while I crammed for exams. But now, I can't even look at a slice without hearing the sound of a man's voice begging for his life. My name's Evan Brooks. I'm 32 years old, a detective with the Lakewood Police Department in Northern Illinois. 3 years ago, I was a rookie patrol officer, still green, still clinging to that rookie belief that I could save everyone if I just tried hard enough. That belief died on a cold Thursday night in late October. It was one of those raw autumn nights where the wind bites through your jacket no matter how tight you pull the zipper. Rain had been coming down steady for hours, pooling in the cracked asphalt of the station parking lot. The kind of night you pray for something quiet, a couple of noise complaints, maybe a drunk stumbling out of a bar. I was at my desk nursing burnt coffee out of a paper cup when my training officer, Tom Rourke, tossed a file on the desk beside me. "Look alive, Brooks. If you're going to stare at paperwork all night, you might as well be useful." I smirked. "What, and ruin my record of most paper clips organized in a single shift?" Rourke snorted and dropped into the chair across from me. At 47, with 20 years on the force, he had that grizzled look of a man who'd seen everything twice and still wasn't impressed. "You'll learn, kid. Quiet nights are just the devil getting ready to drop something in your lap." The desk phone rang. Not the modern cordless kind. This was the ancient beige brick with a cord that looked older than me. Rourke gestured toward it. "Rookie privilege." I sighed and picked up. "Lakewood PD, Officer Brooks speaking." At first, nothing. Just the faint hiss of the line. Then breathing. Ragged, uneven, like the caller had been running. A man's voice shaky. "Please, please help me. He's going to kill me." I straightened in my chair. "Sir, where are you right now?" I don't know. A bank. I think it's a bank. Oh God, he strapped something to me." "Okay," I said, keeping my voice calm. "What's your name?" Matt Larkin. Another voice cut in. Harsh, controlled, right in my ear. Do exactly what I tell you, or I push the button. Then, click. Deadline. 15 minutes later, we were sliding into the back of a cruiser, lights and sirens knifing through the rain. Dispatch had traced the call to First Midwest Savings on Ashland Avenue. By the time we got there, the street was already a circus. Barricades up, civilians pushed back, red and blue lights bouncing off wet pavement. SWAT was unloading from their armored truck. The front doors of the bank were shut tight. No movement inside. On the sidewalk, half soaked from the rain, sat a red Pizza Hut delivery bag. Its zipper was open. A grease-spotted receipt flapped in the wind. Lieutenant Sandra Hale, our shift commander, was barking orders into her radio. Snipers, get eyes on every window. SWAT, stack on the front, but hold until my signal. I walked up beside her. That the guy who called? Could be. She didn't look at me. Could be a setup, could be nothing. But I don't like the delivery bag. And then, like something out of a nightmare, the glass doors swung open. A man stumbled out. Mid-20s, gaunt face, soaked Pizza Hut polo clinging to his chest. His eyes were wide, darting in every direction. In one hand, a pistol. In the other, a black duffel bag. Strapped to his chest, blinking in the drizzle, was a crude bomb vest. "Stay back," he screamed. "Please, don't come near me." I stepped forward, hands up. "Matt, is that your name?" His gaze snapped to me. "He's watching. He said if I don't do what he says, he'll blow me up." "Who's watching?" "The guy who ordered the pizza. I just brought his food. Next thing I know, I'm on the floor and he's strapping this thing to me. Said go to the bank, get the money or..." His voice broke. "Or I'm dead." Rourke's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Keep him talking. We're tracing anything we can." "Matt," I said gently, "you can put the gun down. We'll figure this out." "No!" He shook his head violently. "You don't get it. He's watching. He'll kill me. The red light on his chest blinked faster. Hale's voice in my ear. "Sniper, stand by." "Matt, listen to me." A single shot cracked the air. Matt screamed, stumbled, dropped the pistol. Blood bloomed on his thigh. The duffel hit the ground, spilling stacks of $100 bills into the wet street. Then I heard it. The beeping. Fast. Urgent. Matt's eyes went huge. "No, no, 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 I told you." He clawed at the vest. Rain, blood, and fear mixed on his hands. I ran toward him. The world went white. When I came to, everything was muffled. My ears rang. My mouth tasted of blood and asphalt. Rourke was dragging me backward, shouting my name. 2 officers were dead. 4 more, including me, were injured. Matt Larkin never had a chance. And the man who ordered that pizza? Gone. No prints, no cameras catching his face. Just a ghost with a cruel sense of theater. We've chased every lead. Nothing sticks. Whoever he was, he planned it down to the raindrop. Sometimes, late at night, I still see Matt's face. The panic, the desperation, the way he looked at me like I was his last hope. His last words echo in my head. I was just delivering pizza, and that's why I haven't touched a slice since. Story 8. I never thought I'd spend my evenings wiping down red vinyl booths and smelling like mozzarella. 10 years ago, I was teaching 3rd grade in a small Kansas town, going home to a husband who always had the porch light on for me. Back then, my life had a rhythm. School bells, parent-teacher conferences, grading papers on the couch while Daniel watched the news. Then cancer took him. 3 years after his funeral, my daughter moved to Texas for work. The house on Birch Lane became unbearably quiet. I'd make dinner and catch myself setting 2 plates. I'd hear the neighbor's lawnmower and think it was Daniel rolling ours out. You don't realize how much of your life's soundtrack is someone else's footsteps until they're gone. When I saw the Help Wanted Nights sign at the Pizza Hut by the highway, I wasn't looking for money. Social Security kept me afloat. What I needed was noise, people, somewhere to be that wasn't my living room with the television too loud. I told the manager, a brisk woman named Carla, that I could work any night, close up, mop floors, whatever was needed. She hired me on the spot. The place wasn't glamorous. Peeling wallpaper, the hum of a soda fountain older than some of our staff, the fryer smell that clung to your hair even after a shower. but it gave me routine. The same 6 o'clock clock in, the same familiar crew. Devin, 19, lanky delivery driver with a permanent beanie and a habit of humming old rock songs. Lexi, high school senior, all eyeliner and sarcasm, who could work the register and make TikToks at the same time. Rick, mid-30s cook with tattoos crawling up both arms and a soft spot for stray cats. We joked, complained about tips, traded leftovers at the end of the night. It wasn't family, but it was something like it. The night it happened started like any other. It was late February, wind sharp enough to sting your cheeks. I clocked in at 5:58 p.m., stamping snow off my boots, and found Rick already tossing dough in the back. "Evening, Marla," he called over the clatter of the mixer. "Evening," I said, hanging up my coat. "What's the damage so far?" "Two large Supremes, one meat lovers, and a guy who swore our breadsticks cured his hangover." Rick grinned. Lexi popped her head out from the front. "Don't listen to him. That guy was still drunk." We laughed, and for a while it was just the humdrum flow of dinner orders. Families came in, couples split a pitcher of soda, a group of teens crowded into a booth with phones glowing under the table. By 9, it slowed to a trickle. Devin took a run out to the edge of town, leaving me, Lexi, and Rick. The heaters hummed against the cold, pressing at the windows. At 9:42, the bell over the front door jingled. The man who stepped in didn't match our usual late-night crowd. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, with a wiry build that looked half-starved. His coat was an old Carhartt, stained darker at the cuffs. Mud clung to his jeans like he'd been walking through fields. His baseball cap shadowed his face, but when he looked up, his eyes were pale and restless, darting around like he was cataloging exits. "Hi there," Lexi said automatically, pulling herself upright. "Dine in or carry out?" He didn't answer. He stared at the glowing menu boards above her head, lips moving faintly, like he was whispering to someone I couldn't see. I stepped closer. "Sir, can I help you decide?" His gaze snapped to mine so sharply my chest tightened. "Pizza," he rasped. His voice was dry, scratchy, like he hadn't spoken in days. "Okay," I said gently. "What kind?" He stared for a beat too long, then muttered, "Cheapest one you got." Lexi tapped the register. "Medium cheese, $6.50 with tax." He adjusted the paper grocery bag clutched in his arms and said slowly, "Ain't got it yet." Something in his tone, not embarrassed, not apologetic, made the hair on my neck rise. "Well," I said, trying to keep it neutral, "we can start at once." "It's coming," he interrupted. His eyes flicked to the side door, then back to us. "Soon." I glanced at Rick, who had poked his head out from the kitchen. He mouthed, "Just make it." I nodded to Lexi, and she hit the button for the order. I prepped the dough, sprinkled cheese, slid it into the conveyor oven. The man sat in a corner booth, the grocery bag in front of him, fingers drumming on the table in an irregular pattern. Every so often, his head would jerk toward the windows, like he was expecting someone. When the pizza was done, I set it on the counter. "Sir, your order's ready." He didn't move. Instead, he reached into the grocery bag. I caught the glint of a silver aerosol can. My first thought was hairspray. My second, much worse, came when he pulled a cheap lighter from his coat pocket. "Sir," I started, but the click cut me off. A thin, bright jet of flame burst from the can's nozzle, aimed at the napkin dispenser. Paper caught instantly, curling black at the edges. "Hey, you can't!" Rick lunged forward, but the man was already moving, vaulting the counter with shocking speed. His free hand shot out, tangling in Lexi's hair, dragging her toward him. I didn't think. I grabbed the nearest thing, a metal serving tray, and swung. The clang when it hit his temple echoed off the tiled walls. He staggered, loosened his grip just enough for Lexi to tear free. "Back!" I yelled. "Storage room!" We bolted through the swinging door, shoving it closed. Rick jammed a mop bucket under the handle while Lexi fumbled for her phone, hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. "He's got fire," she stammered to the 911 dispatcher. The door shuddered. Once. Twice. Then the bucket skidded away and he was there, framed in the doorway, grinning with teeth the color of old coffee. "You think the cops get here in time?" he said. His voice was almost conversational. They don't. Flame roared again, licking the grease-spotted ceiling tiles. The smell was instant. Sharp gasoline under burned cheese. I snatched a number 10 can of pizza sauce from the shelf and hurled it. It smashed into his shoulder. He cursed, stumbled, dropped the canister. Rick grabbed a fire extinguisher, blasting white foam between us and the flames. Go! He barked. We hit the emergency exit, the alarm screaming as we spilled into the freezing alley. I could hear his boots on the tiles behind us. Lexi was faster, sprinting toward the glow of Main Street. I risked a glance back. He was gaining. Headlights swept over us. A horn blared. I dove for the curb as a pickup skidded to a stop. The man froze in the beams for half a second, then turned and ran, disappearing into the dark. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone. They took statements, looked at the scorched counter, the soot-blackened ceiling. The damage kept us closed for weeks. Lexi quit. Devin never came back. I told myself I'd return when the place reopened, but every time I smell gasoline or hear the click of a lighter, my chest seizes. And some nights, lying in bed, I think about how he looked past me, toward the door. Like he knew exactly where he was going next. And in a town like Redford, people don't stay gone forever. Story 9, I never pictured myself pulling late shifts at a Pizza Hut again. Not after I swore off food service in my 20s. Back then, I told myself it was just a young person's hustle, flipping dough and boxing up pepperoni pies to pay for college books. I did a year and a half in culinary school before reality smacked me in the face. Tuition's no good if you can't pay rent. I dropped out, took warehouse work, then bounced between delivery driving and odd jobs that barely covered gas. By the time I hit 32, I'd been drifting for nearly a decade. My mom's health was going downhill, and when she passed last March, the little apartment we shared felt too quiet. I sold her old car, kept her favorite coffee mug, and told myself I'd find a stable job, one that didn't chew me up and spit me out in 3 months. That's how I ended up here. Ashford's a blink-and-you-miss-it kind of town in southern Kansas. Population, maybe 2,500 if you count the dogs. There's one grocery store, 2 gas stations, and a Pizza Hut that looks like it's been here since the 80s. The kind with the big red roof and carpet that smells faintly of old Parmesan, no matter how much you mop. The manager, Mark, was an old friend of my cousin. He called me in for an informal interview that was basically him asking, "You breathing? Got a car?" And when I said yes to both, I was hired. My shifts were mostly evenings, 6 p.m. to close at midnight, and sometimes later if the cleaning dragged. The first month was easy. I worked with 2 teenage cooks and a college kid named Brian who ran deliveries. Fridays were our busiest nights. The rest of the week was a slow crawl. I'd spend most of it wiping down tables, refilling the salad bar, and listening to Mark ramble about football. But there was one part of the store I avoided when I could. The walk-in cooler. The cooler was a big metal box tucked in the back kitchen. I'd worked with plenty before, but this one felt wrong. The light inside had a faint flicker, like it was struggling. The air was colder than it should have been, even for a fridge. Not, "Oh, this is doing its job." Cold, but bone-deep cold that made your teeth ache after a minute. And sometimes, when you were in there alone, you'd swear you heard something faint under the hum of the fan. Not dripping, not creaking, breathing. I brushed it off as paranoia. Restaurants are full of weird noises. Compressors, fans, ice machines. You learn to ignore them. One Thursday night, late October, it was just me and Brian. He was out on his last delivery, and I was prepping the cooler for the next day. We were low on cheese and sauce, so I grabbed the inventory sheet, pushed open the heavy cooler door, and stepped inside. The shelves stretched along the walls, stacked with dough trays, sauce buckets, and shrink-wrapped cases of pepperoni. My breath fogged in the air. I did a quick count, jotted down numbers, and was halfway to the door when I heard it. Clink, like glass tapping metal. I turned. The sound had come from the far corner, past the stacks of flour bags. My first thought was that one of the sauce lids had popped loose. I stepped closer, the rubber mat squeaking under my shoes. Nothing. I was about to turn back when something moved. Just at the edge of my vision, behind a stack of boxes, I saw a pale shape, like a shoulder, and then it was gone. "Brian!" I called, my voice sounding small in the cold air. Silence. I backed out fast, letting the heavy door thud shut behind me. My hands were shaking as I filled out the sheet. When Brian came back a few minutes later, I asked if he'd been messing with me. He swore he hadn't even been in the store. 2 nights later, I was on with Mark. Around 11:30, he sent me to grab more dough trays. I hesitated. He noticed. "What's the holdup?" he asked. I told him about the sound, the pale shape. His smile faded. "Just grab the dough, Evan. Don't worry about the cooler. It's old, makes noises." The way he said it, flat, without meeting my eyes, set off alarm bells. By mid-November, the weirdness picked up. Sometimes the cooler door would be open a crack when no one had been in there. Sometimes the light would be off, even though the switch was inside. And once Brian came out pale and swore he felt someone brush past him in the aisle, though the place was empty. The worst was the Saturday before Thanksgiving. It was just me and Mark closing. I was mopping when I heard the cooler door creak open. I looked up. Nobody was there. "Mark?" I called. No answer. I stepped closer, just enough to see inside, and froze. There was a man standing in the middle of the cooler. Not Mark. He was tall, wearing a white shirt that looked damp, with dark stains down the front. His hair hung in wet clumps. His skin had a gray, freezer-burned pallor. He didn't move, just stood there, head tilted slightly, watching me with eyes that looked too wide, too still. My chest tightened. I blinked, and he was gone. The shelves were empty, just trays and boxes. I backed away, heart hammering. Mark came out of the office a minute later like nothing had happened. I told him what I'd seen. He sighed. "You're not the first." That night, over cold breadsticks, he told me about 1998, the year before he became manager. A guy named Joel worked closing shifts here. One winter night, a pipe burst in the cooler. Joel went in to fix it and somehow got locked inside. By the time they found him the next morning, the fan had been running all night. He'd frozen to death, standing up. "They replaced the door, the fan, everything," Mark said. But weird stuff started happening. People seeing him, hearing him. Some quit after one shift. I asked why they didn't close the place down. "Corporate doesn't care," he said. "As long as the ovens work and customers keep coming, a few ghost stories don't matter." I stuck it out another 2 weeks. Then came the last straw. It was a Monday, dead slow. I went into the cooler for cheese, already tense. As I reached for a case, I heard a voice, right next to my ear. "Too cold in here." I spun, hitting the shelves. The man was there again, closer this time. His smile was thin, lips pale. Frost rimed the edges of his shirt. His breath, if that's what it was, came out in long, slow clouds. And then he stepped toward me. I dropped the cheese and bolted, slamming the door behind me. When I looked back through the tiny glass window, there was nothing. I quit the next morning. No 2 weeks, no explanation. Just handed Mark my shirt and walked out. I've worked plenty of lousy jobs since, but none that made my skin crawl like that place. Still, some nights, when I'm half asleep, I dream I'm back in the cooler. The air burns in my lungs, my fingers go numb, and in the corner of my eye, there's a man smiling in the frost. And I know if I look at him too long, I'll never leave. Story 10, I never used to be afraid of working nights. If anything, I liked them. The quiet suited me. Fewer customers, fewer chances for my manager to hover over my shoulder, and the strange kind of calm that comes from watching an empty dining room while the hum of the soda machine fills the silence. My name's Allison Green, but everyone at work calls me Allie. I was 24 back in March of 2023, and if you'd asked me then what my biggest worry was, I probably would have said, figuring out how to pay my car insurance before the grace period runs out. I was living in Willow Creek, Missouri, a small, forgettable town tucked between soybean fields and flat, endless stretches of highway. If you've driven through, you've probably only noticed 2 things: the Walmart Supercenter and the Pizza Hut just off Route 6. That Pizza Hut was where I worked 4 nights a week as a shift lead. I didn't hate the job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to cover rent on my tiny one-bedroom apartment and keep gas in my 15-year-old Civic. Plus, my co-workers were decent people. Not friends exactly, but easy enough to get along with. That night, the one I still think about, started like any other Wednesday closing shift. The dinner crowd in Willow Creek was never big. By 7 p.m., we'd get a handful of families with kids still in soccer uniforms, maybe a couple of older regulars who'd sit in the corner booth and share a medium pepperoni. It was me, Marco, our cook, and Jenna, a college sophomore who worked the register. The three of us could close the place with our eyes closed. Got enough dough prepped back there? I called into the kitchen while refilling the Parmesan shakers. Marco poked his head out from behind the heat lamp. Yeah, but we're out of green peppers. Don't tell anyone or they'll lose their minds. Jenna laughed from the counter. Nobody orders green peppers here. This is Missouri. It was that kind of night. Light jokes, easy pace. The last table left around 8:15. After that, it was carry-out orders and a couple of delivery runs. The door chimed and I glanced up. A man walked in, maybe late 30s, tall, with a windbreaker zipped all the way up despite it being a warm evening. His baseball cap shadowed most of his face. Evening, I said, sliding the carry-out menu toward him. He didn't take it. He just stared at the dining room for a second, then at me. You close at 10? His voice was flat, no inflection. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Plenty of time if you want to order something. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, I'll wait. 4? I started, but he'd already turned and taken a seat in the far booth by the windows, where the parking lot lights cast long shadows across the floor. Jenna gave me a look. Weird. I shrugged, but something about the way he'd said wait stuck with me. By 9:15, the man was still sitting there. No food, no drink, just watching. Marco had gone to the back cooler, and Jenna was wiping down the salad bar. I stepped outside to toss the trash into the dumpster out back. The night was quiet except for the faint hum of the highway a quarter mile away. That's when I noticed it. In the far corner of the lot, past the line of dim streetlights, there were 2 vehicles I hadn't seen before. An old silver van and a dark SUV. No one was getting out. Their engines weren't running. When I came back in, the man in the booth was watching me. The chime over the door went again. This time it was 2 men, both in heavy jackets, one carrying what looked like a long, cardboard box under his arm. They didn't go to the counter. They didn't order. They went straight to the man in the booth and sat down. None of them smiled. Marco popped his head out from the kitchen. We got a late group? Not sure yet, I said, my voice lower than I meant it to be. I picked up the store phone and dialed the number for Trevor, our general manager. No answer. I left a vague message. Hey, something weird's going on. Call me back. When I hung up, Jenna was standing by the counter, eyes flicking toward the booth. They keep looking at the back door, she whispered. Sure enough, the 3 men weren't talking much, just occasionally glancing at the door that led to the storage hallway and the rear exit. 5 minutes before close, the men stood up at the same time. The one with the box headed toward the back hall. The other 2 walked slowly toward the counter. Jenna's eyes widened. Kitchen's closed, sorry, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The taller one leaned forward just enough for me to smell stale cigarette smoke on his jacket. We're not here for pizza. Every muscle in my body went tight. From the corner of my eye, I saw Marco step out of the kitchen. Everything good out here? The man turned his head toward him and smiled. Not friendly, slow, deliberate. A loud clank came from the storage hallway, followed by the sound of something dragging across the floor. Marco took a step toward it, but the man in front of me put a hand flat on the counter. I wouldn't. That's when I realized the front door was locked. I don't know when it happened, but the little silver turn lock was clicked into place. I looked at Jenna. Her face had gone pale. Marco, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, get your keys. The man's eyes flicked toward me, and for a split second, I thought he'd heard. But then, from outside, came the distant wail of a siren. It was far away, but it was enough. The man closest to me muttered something to the others, and they moved fast toward the back exit. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the empty dining room. We didn't chase them. We didn't even breathe for a full 30 seconds after they left. When we finally unlocked the front door, the parking lot was empty. The van and SUV were gone. Marco checked the back hallway. The storage door was cracked open. Inside, 2 cases of bottled water had been pushed aside, and there was a square section of floor with fresh scrape marks, like something had been moved. We called the police. By the time they showed up, the floor had been scrubbed clean. Whatever was there was gone. I told myself I'd forget about it, that it was just a weird one-off incident. But 3 weeks later, Marco sent me a link to a news article. Human remains found in abandoned well behind closed Willow Creek Motel. The picture showed police tape around an overgrown lot less than a mile from our Pizza Hut. The article mentioned an anonymous tip leading officers there. No suspects, no arrests. I never told the cops about the men. I never told my parents. But I quit Pizza Hut the next day. Now I keep my gas tank at half full, my phone fully charged, and my apartment door double locked at night. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't what happens to you. It's realizing how close you came to not walking away at all.